Right. So, when making a map, the important thing is to make sure that you have a piece of paper to draw the map on, and then a pencil or pen, although I find pencil is better. You can always sort of erase mistakes, and sort of when you accidentally add in a mountain or something, you can just sort of remove it and no one will know. Whereas with pen, it's sort of more final, unless you sort of cut out that piece of the page, and then it starts to worry people. So paper, pencil or pen, it doesn't matter. And then I find it's very useful, and I think that of the three components, this is the most critical one. You need to have sort of geography to put it on the map. And now, don't do what I did on my first time. You're not actually putting the geography on the map. Don't dig up soil and actually put it on the map. That's completely the wrong way to do it. No, you're supposed to draw what it looks like. It's mind blown when I discovered that. Yes, absolutely. So those are the components you need for map making. Yes. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Campaign Creator Series. This week's episode is sponsored by Dungeon Fog. Dungeon Fog making amazing battle maps and more in the near future. Dungeon Fog will be providing us with the software that we use today. Please bear in mind that we are using the full subscribed version of it. There is a free version if you want to check out how the program works. And if you feel that you want to get a subscription to Dungeon Fog, use the code GREATGM and you'll get a discount on your subscription purchase. So bear that in mind. So we're going to be using Dungeon Fog. Why are we going to be using Dungeon Fog? Well, today we're going to be translating everything that we've been doing thus far on our culture of the Zulus. We're going to translate into a usable map, and we're going to use all of the bits and bobs that we have gathered so far about this culture to create this map. So we're going to be looking at a historical perspective in terms of designing the map. We're going to look at a fantasy perspective in terms of designing this map. And then we're going to look at the cultural uniquenesses that we incorporated from the previous two videos on the Amazulu. We're going to look at how do we then bring that into this map to make sure that it is really representative of what we are looking for. So it's a practical exercise that we are doing today. That makes it a very lengthy video, of course, because I will be talking you through our entire process. Hey everybody, I'm going to be showing you how I build the map using Dungeon Fog. I think I've already explained all the necessary bits that you need to know. So let's jump straight into this. Now, I will be talking throughout the whole thing, but you can sort of skip through to get to the final product if you so like. But I will be showing you everything that I do in terms of how do I make these maps. So here is Dungeon Fog. You can see it behind me. This is the standard interface. These are maps that I have made in the past. People have asked me how I made this particular river in my map because it seemed to be quite three-dimensional. So I'm going to show you that in this map as well, although we are doing a cultural map. So I'm just going to jump straight into it here. We're going to call this Zulu for now until they give me a name. I choose the rectangle and I'm going to make it 35 by 35 units because I think that's a pretty good size to work from. We are going to use some basic techniques that I use on all of my maps. So first things first, we're going to go into the level editor. We're going to go to level. We're going to change this to plan level. Later on, it's going to become our water level. We're going to see what's going to happen there. And this is our ground level. Okay, so under planning level, I'm going to hide the ground level for now. Under planning level, first of all, we need the stage to change color. It needs to quite literally be white. It can just be a white kind of color. Let's get rid of that. So it's now a white color, and my stage can be a sort of semi-transparent gray. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be using our brush tool. Orange is absolutely fine. If I hold control and scroll on my mouse wheel, I can zoom in and out now on Dungeon Fog. I'm going to change the thickness, so that's fine. Okay, so a Zulu village traditionally, a kraal as they call it, is a circular structure. So I'm going to define that. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to start here and we're going to make our circular structure. So that's the basic shape that would normally be. There'd be, a guard tower there and there. I'm drawing with the mouse, forgive me. Another hut there. Maybe we'd have a little chicken coop or something there and there. The main chief's hut was always the biggest one, so maybe there. Then we'd have the wife's hut next to that, maybe the kid's hut there. Maybe here would be the advisor's hut. And then we would just fill this in with other structures for warriors. Maybe there's a silo over here. Maybe, I don't know, we can play around with that. And then our central area is the actual corral, the area where the cattle would be looked after and maintained. So we can draw that in as well, just to remind us that this is that sort of central space. Okay, so now we've got this set up. When we then go back to layer control and I look at ground layer, on the ground layer, I can actually hide the stage so that I'm seeing the map that I did underneath. And that's going to be really, really useful when I'm putting in the houses. Now, the houses, I have to say, they're usually circular. They are usually made out of a wooden frame that's bent into a beehive kind of shape, and then thatch is applied to that. So one of the things that we can do in Dungeon Fog is manipulate the materials that they have given us, the basic textures, and I have done just that. So I have gone in, let's get rid of that there, and I have said, right, the floor should be a sort of a green color. Why should the floor be green? Now, here's an icky story from my past. Maybe. I thought it was a wonderful experience. When I was growing up living on a farm, we had a large community of Zulu people who wanted to construct some huts and things. And I was privileged enough to participate in building one of these huts. I was only about 6 at the time, maybe even younger than that, but it's a vivid memory. And we put the wood in place and we bent the frame, and it took us a day actually to do that. And then we had to wait for it to dry out a little bit. And then we needed to lay the floor. Now this for me was the fun part. Kinda. Bearing in mind it is on a farm in Africa. You take a basket and you wander out into the cattle fields and you look for dung. And you look and test for the warmest dung with your hands. So you go in and you walk around the field and you sort of see a pile of dung and you test it. And if it's nice and warm, you put it into the bucket that you're carrying, the basket that you're carrying, and you gather as much as you can physically carry. And then you take this warm bucket back to where the hut is being constructed, and then you slop out the contents onto the floor. And slowly but surely you fill out that entire floor to about 4 or 5 centimeters of thickness, if I recall. So it was quite thick, maybe 1.5 inches or so. And you let that settle and you add a bit of water to smoothen it out a little bit. And once that has hardened, it's incredibly hard. It is masticated grass, really. I mean, that's all it is, a bit of bile and some grass. So once it's hardened, you then take a wooden plane and you basically smooth it out until it's got this wonderful patina on it, this shine, this absolute shine on it. It's really tough. It's really hard. Fairly easy to repair if it breaks. It doesn't really crack that much. After years of use it does, but again it's easy to fix. And there is no aroma, there's no smell. It's a grassy kind of smell, but you're going to get that from the thatching around the hut anyway. And yes, it's really good at insulating from the ground. It makes this nice warm space. So there we are. And then we've got thatch around the frame, as I mentioned before. That's grass. So I've kind of got this bamboo roof texture, which I've then tweaked to making it a little bit browner. So it's going to allow us to create this very interesting shape. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do one of these, and then I'm going to go around and populate the rest of it. So I'm going to make a square to begin with. Wall thickness is 12. I actually think I'm going to change that as 10 at the moment. I'm going to change that, I think, to 5. Let's have a look at what 5 looks like. So I've made it 5 now. Yeah, I prefer 5. What I'm going to do now is each of these little huts, they need to be circular. So I'm going to go and make them circular. And then I noticed if I put cave effect on, it kind of looks like busheled grass, sort of clumps of grass. It's not a wooden wall. It's not a flat wall. So that's going to help me when I'm running my game to describe this grass built structure with this wonderful sort of texture to it. Now, I'm not exactly happy with that spot. I think there is better. Right, I'm going to carry on populating the map with these little huts. In the meantime, Bjorg is going to talk to you, I think, or is it Avid? I don't know. I can't keep track of them all. Someone's going to talk to you. Have a look at this.
What is important when we start to consider the tribal nature of this feline race that we're now creating are the differences that have been incorporated now into the culture. We're no longer talking the Amazulu from real world. We're now talking about catfolk who have the same, or similar anyway, cultural behaviors, religious and spiritual activities as those of their inspirers, their progenitors, if you so like. The important thing to bear in mind, of course, is that something that gets added to this collective is magic. And how magic is going to affect the society, how it is going to influence the society, is absolutely crucial. Almost all role-playing games that we play today have an element of fantasy in them. And it is understanding how that fantasy, how that in reality affects the culture that makes it so fascinating, and that will shift it from being a real-world carbon copy to something of your own creation. And it is there that we must turn our attention.
Okay, so now we've got the village basically laid out in my very bad circle. It's not actually a right. It's not. It doesn't matter. All right, so we've got this idea. We've got this large structure in place. There's clearly the chief's hut. We can actually go in if we really wanted to. I don't often do this myself, but we certainly could. We could go and label it chief's hut. And you know, this can be really useful for reminding ourselves why it was done. So priest's hut. I thought this could be a little jail. Could be quite fun, maybe. So this is just priest 2. So yeah, so we can work our way through it. If we wanted to rename them God's Barracks. Sometimes useful, sometimes not. It's just something to bear in mind. Anyway, the idea now is, as they were saying, to look at defenses. When we're doing this outer circumference wall, we need to figure out, are we going to do it as a room? We could certainly do that. Or are we going to do it as props? We can certainly do that. There's some options that present themselves. So we need to think about what other elements do we need to add? So from a historical perspective, we've pretty much got this down. The central corral, we could certainly make it as a room. I certainly don't have a problem with that. I think that could work. We must just make sure, though, that we're not just recreating historical maps. Otherwise, just download a historical map to use. I mean, they exist. They're there. Trust me. We don't want to just do that. We want to make it our own. And so I know that certainly someone has an idea on how to do that.
Thank you. When it comes to the design of a structure, doesn't matter which, it's always about the desire. What did the designer desire truly when creating the space? Once you figure that out, it's easy to start to add in extra details. When it comes to magic, however, what is truly desirous about this culture, the phylactery beads, is important. So somewhere where those are manufactured, somewhere where this incantation spell with the dead is transferred into the beads needs to be on our map. Why? Because if we don't include it on the map and we don't have a location for it, how are the players ever going to find out that that's part of the culture that we created in the first place? It's no good creating all these amazingly wonderful and fabulous magical backstories if the players never know about them. So, what do we truly desire? To reveal our world to our players, and as a result we must incorporate it into our design. So, function of the builders, their true desire was to protect that which is important to them. The phylactery is a representation of that. It protects the spirit of the ancestor that was truly important to them. So it makes sense for it to be more central than perhaps on the outskirts. On the other hand, the choir, which arguably will need some kind of rehearsals from time to time, might be dangerous to include in the center of the village. Let's all get together and hum a tune. Oops, we just burnt down the chief's hut. We should avoid those kinds of things. Again, what is our desire? Our desire is to practice so we are more powerful. Our desire and our need is to have somewhere to do that, not anywhere near that which we hold dear, which is the phylacteries. Desire is a very powerful thing. And when you combine that together with things like what is the characters actually need, and the characters here are the NPCs, you get a map that draws itself. It really does. I like the idea of culturally applying this whole thing to working out firstly the resurrection space, this central space could work quite well. I also like the idea of the animals being contained in it. So I think as a combination, cat people wouldn't keep cattle. I don't think they wouldn't keep cows. They might. I think they keep fish. So we need a lake. And that's what I'm going to be working on now is a lake option, because I think a lake option is actually going to work really well. It's going to work really well for us. So I'm going to show you how to do a lake now, a three-dimensional lake, if you will. And so I've got here the draw shape tool, which I have on reliable authority is going to be changing in the near future. So bear with us on that one. But I'm going to draw this lake. Now I'm going to draw the reverse of it. I'm going to draw the reverse of it, and you're going to see why in a little bit. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and that means I can click anywhere on the map. I'm not bound to the grid because we want this to be fairly organic. There's the chief's hut, so he's going to get a little plateau to come and have a look here. And I'm not too phased. I'm going to have the river coming out here, actually. You know, these things have got to be, there's got to be a water source from somewhere, and so that's what I'm going to do. The benefit of a water source is that oftentimes these places were built on rivers, or near rivers, I should say, because it made life easy, right? So we're going to do maybe to there, and then we're going to come in here. The other benefit of a watercourse, and I think we're going to hear from Artusi on this one, is that it allows the characters to get in close if they so need to. Okay. Keep going, nearly there, and booyakasha. All right. I chose a particular texture, doesn't really matter. We can come back and tweak this to our heart's content. First thing we're going to do is get rid of the outline. We're going to say that it has an inner shadow and an outer shadow. We want it to have both. So we get this sort of bending effect, if you like. We're going to cover up most of that anyway. So now we have this lake. Artusi wants us to have a structure in the middle of the lake. I don't see why it wouldn't be built out of the same substance. I really don't. So I'm actually going to make another one of these. I'm going to come in here and say that we have, mustn't be big, I don't think. I mean, it's a few feet across, right? There is our other structure. I'm going to do the same. No outline, but we do want shadows on either side. So that's where that's going to be. If it's supposed to be a hut, we could fit in a hut in there. Maybe it shouldn't be. That's just a plinth. It's open to the gods. That's the excuse we're going to use. That's what I'm going to stick with for now. All right, so there we go. What this allows us to do is we can no longer see the layout of our original map. Not a problem. We didn't need to see the layout of our original map moving forward anyway. So if we go down to our original map, we can see a slight overlay of our city there. But what this now does is this now changes from plan. It could now become underground. Not a problem with that whatsoever. If we want to put in a cellar or something like that, we certainly can do that. It can also, and this is the important thing, save. The important thing is that it's our second layer to our river. And we're going to look at that right now. So
I'm going to get rid of. We don't need these shapes anymore. They are done. We are finished with them. So I'm going to take these out. Okay, so the shapes have now been removed. Whilst I continue to prep this, we want this to be a river. So I've got a few options here in terms of how I want to treat this. I know what I'm going to be doing, as I'm going to actually make the river a brush tool. Now, brushes are really powerful. Let's get rid of the stage thing for now. And I am going to brush onto this floor what I want for the bottom of the river. So I'm going to go with dirt. I'm going to choose some rocky soil here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm at 500% scaling. Thickness, nice and thick. Opacity, 100%. No softness. I don't need softness in this instance. I am pasting in this texture of what the river would be like. Now, we can really go into a lot of detail if we really, really, really wanted to, in terms of what this is going to, you know, we could add more and we can tone it and shade it and adjust it. And I mean, there's just a ton of things that we could do to it. We're not going to do it, but we could. All right, so that's point number one. Point number two is now I'm going to add in some props. And for props, I'm going to go to pirates, because pirates came with a few things that are going to be useful for us. Firstly, they came with shore grass, and so I'm going to increase the size. Control, Shift, and Scroll does that for you. I'm going to increase the size of the shore grass. Shift, Scroll just rotates it. So I'm going to be able to do some of this. Some of this will be visible, some of it won't be. Okay, and I can see the huts there. So maybe the entrance is a bit choked with grass. It could be an adventure. Go and clear the main passageway. It's become choked with grasses, and the water is not feeding our precious fish. Go, brave adventurers, and fight the giant sea bass. Mutated sea bass. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Boom, boom, boom. Sometimes we can go a bit slower or faster, depending. It doesn't have to be all the way around. It just needs to be hinted at. We're going to use some other plants as well. Yeah, again, this is depending on how much you want to go. What I do like about Pirates is that it came with, where are we? A whole bunch of underwater stuff, which is always cool to include. We could put an anchor in there. I don't think so. Here's some more seagrass if we wanted to add in some different sort of colored grass. We can, if we so choose. And of course, we'd come out here and we'd fill out the river. Maybe the river's got different types of grass in it. That's why it's the river and it's more grassy, if that's a word. Just roughly following the lines that we made. And shrinking and changing the size is really powerful in terms of making these props work. And also breaking repetitive lines is useful. Okay, and bingo. I don't think there's any others. All right, so we could drop a rib cage in here if we wanted to. I'm going to, because it's going to just make it a little bit more scary. And then we've got swarms of fish. Now, we said we wanted fish in here, so I'm going to add in some fish. So there we go. Nice school of fish, busy swimming around there. Perhaps we can have another shoal in here on the corner, just to indicate that there's fish. We don't want starfish, because I don't think you get freshwater starfish. Stand to be corrected. Seashells, same story. A broken amphora or something along those lines. Nah, we don't need that. Okay, good. We are golden. Our river has got some texture to it. So now what happens? Now when we go back to our stage, when we go back to our levels and we go back to ground, look, we've suddenly got this thing happening, which I think is very exciting. I think it's very, very, very exciting. It starts to look very three-dimensional in my opinion. I like that. It's exciting. What we can then do is we can add another layer if we so choose. We can go back to this basic layer, and now we go to this, not that tool, we go to this tool. Again, I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to choose a water texture, which I want it to be, let's take shimmering green. Okay, that's fine, 300% is fine, and I'm going to block out as best I can, just roughly, because unless we turn this into an underground, no one will see this layer ever. It's a working layer, quite literally. Okay, so there we have that, and we're seeing the overlay is of the map above. So we'll bear that in mind. We take out that outline. The inner shadow, outer shadow doesn't really matter. Definitely doesn't matter these days. We're going to change that opacity. We're going to drop that opacity down. But before we do that, we're going to change the size of this. We're at 300%. I think 600% might make more sense. Okay. And I'm going to drop this opacity down to maybe about there. 39%, somewhere there, right? So that when we then go back to our levels and our layers and we go up here, we still have our beautiful water texture coming through. Let me scroll in on this. We have our wonderful water texture coming through, but we can now play with that. We can actually add more on this level using that brush tool if we wanted to. So if we wanted to highlight something, or we wanted to change the way that the water works, we can do that now. We can come in here. We change our opacity, we change our softness up, we change our size around, and now we can add in this water effect, this beautiful, beautiful water effect. Creates this wonderful three-dimensional space. Okay, and again, we can select it, and we can change that opacity, so we can sort of see the fish in there. Yes, we can. They're busy swimming around. I think that works quite nicely. That works very nicely, actually. And then when we come to the actual river part, we then maybe want a different color water because it's river. So we'll go there, and we're going to maybe, let's play around with darkening it down. Oh, we're not blood red. That's too much. Something sort of there-ish, maybe. Knock out some color, darken it down a bit. Maybe a bit more brown, something along those lines. And we can make the thickness a bit more. And now we can create our polluted river. I think I've chosen the wrong color here, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Okay, but again, it's not a problem. Select it, come in here. It's too green, I agree. There we go, let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's a bit more like a river in Africa. Heavily laden with silt is oftentimes the case. And as a result of that, I think we need to change the opacity even more. I've just remembered something which could be quite fun to add in to this river area anyway. We go down to this layer, and we go to props, and we go to desert. Desert, CD, desert. There we go. There are crocodiles. Which if I expand up a little bit and rotate, could be a fun little thing to have in our water. Now, if I go to content, the crocodile is above everything, you see. We don't want that, so we're going to move him down. So it's always about layer management as well. There we go. I like that. Again, I'm wondering if this isn't too strong a texture. So drop it down to, let's say, 30% or so. Back to levels, back to upper layer, and boom, there we go. Obviously, next stage will be to add in waves and ripples along the beach and incorporate it. But we've now got this wonderful, wonderful three-dimensional sense. We could go in and put lights in there and tweak it up and really make it work to our advantage as we so choose. But anyway, that's how we do it. That's how we create this sense of depth. I think it works really well.
Now, some of these effects and things are only going to take place once the characters have activated it or done something along those lines. Again, one of the benefits of having an online map maker is that you can create two versions quite literally with a click of a button. So one map for the players, then the choirs start singing and the magic beads with a bee or whatever. I mean, however this thing is taking place. All of that then starts to get added, and then you can have a second map. Bingo, thank you for playing. Here it is now with swirling portals, etc., etc. So I think that's also something to bear in mind, is that we can have multiple versions of the same map, quite literally with just, now we've got a duplicate. Talking about duplicates, I wish there wasn't any, Professor Creasy. You can be so bitter that some of us are more successful than others. Really, really, really. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the cultural uniqueness of this race that we're creating within this world. And what we need to look at is ways in which that can be expressed within the geography, within the layout of the building. So we've got to look at what would catfolk, these unnamed people, what would they have that separates them, say, from centaurs or from orcs? How can we express that within the color palette of the map that we so choose, within those kinds of parameters, to further enhance this idea that there are these catfolk that live out on the savannas? So that's important. Another thing that's important, and this is really all about the theatre, the theatricality, that wonderful, wonderful space where I should be, but was denied because I can't perform. All of those kinds of, that wonderful space, we need to think about it from a theatrical perspective. And what that means is that we are in the theatre of the mind, the greatest audience of my life. That is where we are. And so we need to make sure that there are these opportunities. When you look at facilities designed by modern day architects, for example, there are very few back doors. There are very few portals that will lead to the central core. Those sort of mistakes are not necessarily made. They are made from time to time. We're only human, but they are something that we need to incorporate into our maps so that our characters can take advantage of them. In real circumstances, they may not make sense. A great example by way of demonstrating the rule, that the exception, I should say, is in Star Trek V, that awful, awful film. It started off with the characters being placed in a prison that could not be escaped from. In creating a standard prison, one would assume that prisons are always designed not to be escaped from, but in creating that perfect prison, a story was created about how to get out of that perfect prison. And without certain components, there would have not been any kind of story whatsoever. Generally speaking, however, it is about incorporating that rusty grate in the floor, the bars which can be bent with a bit of urine and some cloth if you so inclined. All those kinds of things need to be incorporated so that our characters do stand a chance of actually breaking out and getting out as we need them to, as the story might go. So there's a little bit of a bending, a little theatricality that needs to be incorporated in our maps as well. We don't need to be as ruthless as we would normally be in real life, I suppose. And that goes for critics too.
Okay, so what I realized was I could make my own asset, this iron bush, which came from the original collection from Dungeon Fog of the Wastelands. It was a metal tree, but I realized that when you zoom in and you change its color and you put down a whole bunch of them, it starts to look like the interlocked, broken or old original foliage kind of material. So I quite like that idea. I thought, okay, cool, that's great. You can now see, this is the scale that the players will be playing at. You can see that water really starting to have that wonderful, wonderful three-dimensional effect of this lake. Oh, there's our crocodile. I quite like I do. Okay, so we've got this fence now that we've gone all the way around, and I put a little bit around the structure itself. As Professor Crazy says, sometimes we have to plan for players wanting to get into places. So I've made this little space here where, in one of my favorite authors, Terry Pratchett, he used to write about the Unseen University. And in the Unseen University, there was a break in the wall that all of the first year students learned about and then everyone would use, including the faculty members. I like that part. And so there's a little break. There's a little break. Whether it's known or unknown to the Cathar at the moment doesn't matter. It's looking really good so far. I mean, that's the beauty of it, is that it really does look, I think it looks pretty good anyway. Okay, we're going to go in now and we're going to add some bits and bobs to this space. We still have to make this phylactery altar thingy that everyone's been talking about. Let's drop that in now. Let's think about this. The best advice that I was ever given is that often it's not about how skilled you are. It's about how good you are at remembering stuff. So I think for this altar, if we put in like a rock formation as a traditional kind of, you go and you lie down on the rock and then you get absorbed, I think that could work quite nicely. So I'm going to do that. Oh, I'm going to turn that off. All right, so there's our rock. Color's not grabbing me. I want it more sandstone-y. Maybe a bit darker as well. Is that too yellow, maybe? There we go. That's a bit better. That's better. That kind of fits with my idea of this space. So we've got this rock. We do need it to feel a little bit more magical, I think, than what it currently is. So do we want to put a fire on top of it? Maybe there's a burning bush or something. Maybe. Sometimes it's about just looking at what assets we have and deciding maybe an obelisk, maybe a statue of a sphinx, the ultimate cat. It could be cemetery. Could it be like a statue? I feel like that's too constructed. I feel like that's too constructed for the Cathar. It doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't feel like that's what they would have. What's desert got to offer? They've got mammoth bones. They've got a mammoth head. Could that be like a thing? I don't know. That's we do have a leopard. Oh, a cat. No, wait. Never put cat hide, because this is a cheetah or a leopard or something on the rock. I mean, that's the ultimate. Though, I was about to say that's the ultimate insult. Look, there's a flayed one of us. But now my brain is thinking we could actually put it in there as one of these Cathar that has died. I know it's awfully macabre. And okay, there's the sacred tree. There we go. We're going to put the sacred tree in the thing. So that's how it works. That is our monument, if you like. But I do know that a new asset pack just dropped, and they have a whole collection of bones, which I really like. So that's a huge rib cage. It's a giant's rib cage. This might be too much detail. It might be too much detail, but I like it. I like it. I'll shrink everything down so that it sort of fits roughly. Good luck to the players who find this. They'll be freaking out. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? It's lovely. Absolutely lovely. There's a paw, or a hand in this case. Okay, and boom, boom, boom. Because why would you bury the body? You know that the soul is contained in a phylactery, so the body could quite easily kind of be left wherever. Doesn't matter. We won't do a skull. Maybe the skull's placed somewhere. Maybe that's what we need to figure out. But the players come across this village. I think that's cool. I don't know about you. I think that's cool. We've got a whole bunch of options here with some animal bones that we can drop into. Dogs that have been slain. looks like a dog, or maybe it's a horse. I'd have to have a look. Anyway, that's our temple. The only other thing I want to do, because I like the macabre, is to add in some blood. And ironically, the Victorian set had the best blood. I think it was in Dungeon. Puddle of blood. There we go. Ta-da! Nice big puddle of blood on our sacrificial stone. Again, layering will normally be a problem, except in this case we take it and we just make sure it's above the floating rock. There we go. And possibly even we'll select it and change its opacity a little bit so it's not so harsh. Right. There's our special phylactery making altar thingy, and woe betide anyone who disagrees. All I'm going to do now is finish off around the edges. So I'm going to go back to desert, because desert had dried grass, which was quite nice. So we can come in here and just plop down some dried grass. Make this feel a little bit more real. Okay, great. And the rest we're going to use a brush tool to clean up as we so need. We don't need it just yet. Right, good. Next is doors. Doors. So there are some fantasy doors that we can go with, some pretty cool ones. Skeletal doors, which I really like. Are they appropriate though? I don't think so. So I'm going to go with wooden doors. Traditionally, they weren't actually. The doors in the huts were basically just circular archways that you had to bend down to go through. So again, don't have a problem with that. But in this case, we need a doorway, so I'm just going to put in a wooden doorway. I think that's going to work best. So the chief would have a doorway there. The priest would have a doorway there. These don't actually connect, so I can't do a single doorway through here. So I'm going to move that, because this is the wife. This is the wife, and we've established that they are going to be... am I on the wrong map here? Yeah, I know what's going on. So I can't select this house because it's selecting this entire shape. So I need to go to layer control. And where is this layer? This thing that's getting in my way now. Stage. Is it rooms? Does it count as a room? No. I will find you, and I will freeze you. There we go. It's this one here. If I click on the little lock button, I don't know if you can see that. Yes, you can. It's no longer selectable. So now I can't select it. I can now select the structures on top of it. Useful little thing to bear in mind. Okay, so we wanted to move this so that it overlaps with the chief's hut. There we go. There's our it's linked button, which we quite like. So that gives us more room over here to move you in there. Okay. You can actually move back into there. You've got a bit more space now. Okay, good and better. Right. So now we can go back to doors. You see, I love how everything is just integrated, and as you put in a door, you realize you'd need another door here, and maybe an exit for a latrine would be out this way, and also an escape route for our heroes to run through that gap over there. You know, it's all just part of the grand scheme of things. Circular shapes, if you put them on the join, the doors don't make that lovely cutaway. If you leave them, if you put them in the middle, you'll be okay. So For example, if I were to put it like here, I know it's all right. It's fine. Okay, shut up. Ignore me. Entrance there, entrance there, entrance there, entrance there. Back door out there, main entrance there. Okay, so even just placing doors for me is a wonderful exercise in thinking around the design. No, that's stupid. You see what I'm saying? So it just dislocates there, so it actually has to sit there. There we go. That's better. Can lead you to all kinds of wonderful little discoveries. So there we go. Okay, we are adored. Yay, we are adored. Ha 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 ha. Okay, windows were not a common feature in the huts, and I think I'm going to stick with that because, again, I think it's not something that we need to worry about. This surface, which I've now locked so we can't select on, is actually irritating me. The colour's wrong. I think the colour's wrong, but I'm gonna brush over it anyway. Right, interior of this structure, I'm not too phased by. I don't need it to be overly complicated. I'm not sure exactly what they would even have inside of these things. Maybe we could do some pillars or piles of hay. I'm not seeing like giant amounts of detail going on in here. So I'm going to make a pillar. Let's shrink that down a little bit. I'm going to go boom, 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 boom. Because it's such a big hut, it needs pillars, arguably. I'm going to make them feel more appropriate to the space. So more like brown pillars. Probably a whole bunch of things that I could do. Tools, so 40, 40, 14. Okay, remember that. 40, 40, 14. Colorized. 40, 40, 14. I love this about the program. It does take a little bit of time, but ultimately I think it's worth it. Okay, no one else gets pillars because they're not the kingly throne room. Maybe a throne. More furs, I think. So I think they have a bear rug in here somewhere, if memory serves. I could go looking for it, but I'm too lazy. Barrels and crates. I think they could have some crates, not in the kingly room. I don't think the king would have crates. This is the witch doctor, so we're going to put in some cool stuff there for him. This is just could be a guard tower, maybe. This could be a storage room. I could see this being a storage space. I'm going to shrink those crates down a little bit and make it more crate-like. Again, I'm going to make it so that there is a space for players, characters to hide. I know it sounds like it's making it too easy, as in, oh, the players are going to be able to walk through here without any problems whatsoever. That's not the intention. The intention is that if they get stuck, I, as the game master, have got a way to get them, to give them the opportunity to get themselves out of a situation that they've got themselves into. Because they will get themselves into situations. It's players. We know they will. We accept it. We do. Any other cratey sort of spaces? No, I don't feel like they would have a crate. Nah, no crates. Okay, so then barrels. We always need barrels. Barrels are always fun. 1 barrel for you. 1 barrel for you. You're going to be grain. You're going to be thingy. Oh, all right. We'll give you a barrel. Maybe we'll put a barrel out here for that beer that they make. Maybe. He said, remembering that they make beer, and suddenly that there should be a beer hut somewhere. I'm going to think about that one. I'll come back to it. I will come back to it. He definitely he needs a door. He needs a door. He ain't got no bleeding door. All right, we'll get a door for you then. Calm yourself. I think everyone's finished talking about what they wanted to talk about. It's just me left, plodding through this whole thing. Okay. A chest. Oh well, if we're gonna have a kingly room, we've got to have chests in it, don't we? So put in a chest. Pile of hay. I'm going to drop into here, so it sort of represents grain stores. I think that's quite nice. Okay, stuffed deer. Would the king have a stuffed deer? Yeah. Okay, maybe it's guarding the treasure chest. Broken bones. Summoning circle. Oh, summoning circle. Yes, thank you. Okay, pop that in. Books, no. Debris. If we really wanted to, we could enhance this fence a bit more. Not blowing my hair back though. Where was that? We were looking for a bear thingy. Maybe it's under furniture. Bear rug. There we go. So as you enter, you get glared at by this giant grizzly rug. Quite literally, a grizzly rug. Okay, he's a priest, so he's going to have like priestly bookshelves and stuff. I do like how it keeps it to the room, so you can add these bookshelves ostensibly to a circular room. And they just fit so nicely together. And don't stick out the back, which I hate. Bench. Let's put a little bench in front of the sacrificial stone. People like to watch, after all. Well, it's not sacrificial. It's convertory? Ascension. It's a special moment. Oh, yes. Now, they did ask me to put in a choir practice thingy somewhere. So I won't forget it much. He lied. I have completely forgotten about it. So I will go in and I will do that at some point. I swear I will. A banner. Oh, we could put a banner. Put a banner in front of the chief's hut. Why not? That could look quite nice. And then maybe another one over here declaring whom they are. And possibly one here. Okay, I quite like that. Fallen tree, always fun. Not many trees. Well, there must be some trees, right? But just to sort of drop it in this case, literally. We've got some nice tanner frames that we can drop in to make the village feel like it's living. A living workspace. Skewered animal being dried, you know, so we can go to town on what we want to include and not include. Right, okay, so our savannah water will be made better once we start adding more things in. This has just reminded me we're not going to do that now though, and those are not savannah trees, but maybe a tree stump. I like tree stumps. Right, what are we looking for now? Let's go to the forest. What's in the forest? Some cool stuff, if I recall correctly, but not exactly what we would expect to find in the savannah. Oh, but I did want a beer brewing thing. Now, this may never, ever come up. Bathtub filled. That's what I was looking for. This may never, ever come up in the game. Ever. But I know it's there. And now you know it's there. So, bully for us, I say. Now there's Ukamba. Remember, that was the thing that they contained everything in. I think, you know, it's definitely, it's not anachronistic because the time frame these existed, but it will help jog our memory, no doubt about it. Let's put down a barrel first. Where? There, I guess. And then there'd probably be some more barrels out here. Okay, on our barrel, we'll put a little M4A. Okay. And let's just go and change the color of our liquid. That's a sort of beery color, I think. Yeah, that works. And if we're doing really pedantic, dunk, 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 beer room. This will come in handy when we go to World Anvil later on. Okay, I'm going to carry on populating this map. I don't think you want to hear me waffling on about everything that's involved here. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. As always, useful to hear what you like, what you don't like. But yes, I will carry on doing this until we get to the point that it is almost done. We've got a few other bits and bobs to work out. Just in terms of making the map super pretty, because I do want to do that. I'm just putting in some tatami mats at the moment. Very comfortable for floors. In this case, though, I'm putting it, I think this was a barracks, or at least that's what it was in my head. Anyway, we want some wives to have some beds, so maybe they usually put them around the edges. So we'll do that, and then we're almost done. No, the chief is going to stay with his wives in here. All right, the priest needs a little bed. He's got to sleep somewhere. As mystical as he might be, he's got to sleep, or she, I don't know. This was a barracks, another barracks for more guards, I guess. Maybe this is the one that's they're on duty. Something like that. That, I don't know what that's for yet. And that, we'll do that. Just fill it in. Okay, good. Right. Don't need any. Oh, sword stand could work quite nicely. Whenever they release new prop packs, I like to make use of them. I mean, it just gives us something extra to add to the map. We can I think someone mentioned it earlier on, we can overdo it, so we must be careful not to do that. But I do like to have some cool stuff every now and again. Just a little, yeah, just a little something. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be mega, just something that gives us a sense of a different culture, a working space. Maybe they use chopsticks. Never thought of that. Okay. I also like to place objects on top of other objects to make them feel a little bit more almost haphazardly lived in would be a good a good descriptor, I suppose. I do like this tea set. I think that's pretty awesome. Again, to show that the women stay here. Not that I'm saying that women only drink tea. It's just a bit more feminine, I suppose, to have a nice tea set. All right, that's enough from there. Let's go and plunder some other culture, as they say. So I think, what's the church got to offer us? Statues, scrolls. Maybe we need some scrolls here. We could go with a scroll or two to indicate that this is a bookshelf. Some scribbled notes, perhaps. A lion statue, a dead priest is always useful. No, I think we've got enough from there. What's lacking? What are we lacking? We've got our central meeting area. We've got that. Oh, little fire pits. Little fire pits. So we can certainly add those in. Fire pits. Just seeing if there's anything there that's exciting. No, fire pits come from fantasy. Outdoor. I believe. Yes, campfire. Okay. So most of them will have. I suppose that's the right orientation. I might just change those white stones. They're very bright. You don't get a campfire. Okay, that's fine. Tree log. I quite like this tree log. Don't know why. Anyway, putting it there, you know, they can sit and they can watch and they can look at stuff and see what's going on and understand the ceremony that's involved. And I'm just adding in these twigs to break up the coloration of these walls, because I really like how this fence post has sort of evolved into what it is. I think it works quite well, if I do say so myself. Choir. They wanted a choir thingy. You can see that I'm running out of things to talk about because I'm like, okay, I've got to do that. I've got to do that. What am I going to do for that? What am I going to do for that? Okay, so that's done. Or would a circular fire pit be better? I think a circular fire pit would be better. Damn it. Okay. It's just the white of these stones, I think, was just too contrasty. Don't think anyone else got a fire pit. No, all right. Back here, circular fire pit, if you please. What I like about the circular fire pit, I forgot about that actually, is that it's going to give us some nice lighting effects, which I think is a real power of this program. The way that these places were built, by the way, is that these domed-like beehive structures, they would release the smoke up into the air, which would then drift around, obviously, but they'd have a little gap at the top, which was ingenious to solving that problem. Okay, and now we need to put some fire. Let there be light. Are we done, though? Are we done? I don't think it's too much to ask. I think we're okay. We could go and put in food and stuff, but again, I think that's just too much. So let's zoom out on our map. What are we missing? That choir practice space, I think it would actually happen further away from the village than this map would allow for. And I think to extend the map out, I would do it as a separate map. That would be me personally. So what we're now going to do is my favorite part, because we get to be very creative, is we're now going to layer the ground. I think we're pretty, no, wrong button. I think we're pretty much there in terms of the props that we want to add. We could keep adding props as we went. Maybe some foliage could be added to this water line. Arguably some more grass tufts here and there. That's entirely up to you. But this is my favorite part.
When we're talking about the historical approach to defenses, this outer ring wall and then the more enclosed central space is nothing new. We've seen it for thousands of years, and it works relatively well. In the case of these individuals, where they're in the middle of the savannas, they are protecting against all kinds of creatures, and it is important for us to realize that they are not necessarily going to be protecting against other humanoids. This is something that I think we don't take into account very often when we are designing our campaigns. It's that humans are, for the most part, one of the least dangerous of the creatures out there. If you are a quiet little village and you are overrun by a horde of 100 goblins, you're going to get wiped out. So a fence which would keep a human most of the time out might not work for a goblin. At the same time, a fence that would keep a human or a goblin out, an ogre or a giant might walk straight through. That's not to imply that the structures that we build in our fantasy worlds need to accommodate for these kinds of environments. I'm just saying that there needs to be a little consideration in terms of what else is going on in the environment as to what type of defenses are going to be incorporated. When we look at other cultures, sometimes the castles were not made out of stone. They didn't need to be. It was thatch, which was more than sufficient to keep the creatures and the locals out. Bear this in mind when you're designing this map, because it will allow you to create a more individual, more unique feeling to the space, rather than just a generic stone wall and a wooden floor. Those are not necessarily the right things to do when you are, to a certain degree, nomadic, or you need to be able to move around quickly, or you don't have a reason to build something that will last for 100 or 500 years. All very important things to bear in mind.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of our map creation process. Just the neatening up of it and the lighting effect. So if you don't want to hang around for that, just skip on ahead, because it's not laborious, quite quick actually, but maybe you want to get to the end. Okay, so we can't draw on this layer at the moment, just because of the way that Dungeon Fog works. So how do we make this surface texture feel more interesting? We're going to use blood for that. Now, I am not going to use that blood. I am going to go to the Victorians, because as we have already established, they have the nicest of bloods. So we're going to use their blood. And what am I doing here? I'm going to use their blood. There we go. And I'm going to make it huge. I'm going to make it really, 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 really big. That's about right there. And then I'm going to plop it down. Now, don't think that I've gone completely nuts. What we're doing is, and I hope you can see that I'm very specifically avoiding the water. Okay. So we need there to be some sense of texture. Something that just makes this space feel used. No, wrong. Used. It's okay if I overlap a little bit. And alive, basically. And I do that using textures, using these things. So I can't draw on this thing. It's just how it works. Now I'm going to come into each blood pool and firstly darken it down, take out most of its color, and then make its opacity virtually nothing. And all it's doing is it's subtly, do you see how it's doing that? It's just subtly dirtying up the floor so that it isn't the same repeated texture everywhere. And that's what we want. We want it to feel lived in and to feel as if, yeah, someone spilt something here, or there's a puddle of something, or, you know, and again, don't be afraid to make it big. And I'm trying to avoid the water because we don't want the water to feel tainted. Oh, now it's put it in that room. Okay, so we don't want it. You want to make sure the center of it sits outside of the building center, because otherwise the building center is going to get it. So there we go. That's absolutely fine. We can see that that's too much, so we just dial it back a little bit. Just subtle blemishes, which now I can't select anything else because this one's so big. That's not a problem. We select this and we just lock it. And once it's locked, we can't select it again. So now we can select other things. So this was a trick I learned from the creator of Dungeon Fog, as a matter of fact, is just to do this. I think it looks really cool. I think it really helps with the sort of immersion factor, if you like. Maybe it's too much. Maybe it's not enough. I don't know. And you can actually go into the rooms and do this as well if you want sort of like a quick texturing, if you like, of that space. So when I look at that, I go, okay, that's looking a little bit more used, a little bit more abused. I can continue that all the way around the edges. I'm going to add in some foliage now because that's what we want to make this space work really well. What I might even do is come here and go with, let's say, a sort of grass. There was some grass stuff that was under nature. We want grass. There was something called long grass, which looked quite nice. Prairie grass could work. Long grass could be better. When I think of the savannah, prairie grass is pretty cool. What does long grass look like? Yeah, long grass looks pretty cool as well. What I really like about this program is that you can layer things really, really, really well. So that you can always get, I think anyway, really good effects. And it's always about remembering what layer are you on, what is your effect goal, and then moving it appropriately, because we will need to move it. Let's see now what I'm doing. Okay, good. So we're in what I would call the final layer of map making. And this is often a layer that I feel that a lot of people just don't ever get to. And it is the beautification of the map. Often it's just functional, click, 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 click. And maybe that's just a function of time. You know, oh, I don't have a lot of time, so I've got to do this thing really quickly. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's only when you start to when you start to say, okay, well, I want this to look really great. How do I do that? That you then need to spend some time beautifying. Now, by just putting in that grass, oh, I forgot to do that area. Is it going to bother me? Yeah, probably. Anyway, we'll come back. I should have done another one. Oh, I'll just do another one. I'll just do another one. I'll just do another one. Look, I'm doing another one. Don't judge me. Just because I forgot part of my grand plan. Where are we going with this? Okay, perfect. Notice how it automatically defaults to the top layer. There's nothing wrong with that. We're going to move it all the way down, all the way down. So all the dirting effects and stuff that we've done with the blood layering, that will all just vanish as well. So many iron bushes. So many iron bushes. What is up with that? Okay, good. Right. So our village is not looking bad, if I do say so myself. The last thing to do, I think, would be to go in and populate this with stuff. So whether it's trees, let me think about this for a moment. Trees. That's tables. Trees. Dead trees? Would dead trees work? As a sort of a savannah-esque thing. Well, there's a fallen one over there, so maybe. And there's lots of them being incorporated. Yeah, okay. I'll come back and recolor them so they're not all the same sort of color. I don't want thousands of trees either, so that's why I'm not dropping them down. If you do notice that I'm quietly trying to drop them on edges, so that the edges are broken up. They're not so obvious, you know. So right there's a hard line, and we've got a tree stump there already, so I can't use it there. Yeah, no, okay, we're done with that. So I try to do that. Then we'll go. Desert's always good for like bits of brush, and you know, again, it depends entirely on us. How much extra detail do we want? How far do we want to take it in terms of breaking up these lines? You know, we can, as you can see here, we could completely mask it. We really could, and probably I don't want to say should, but we certainly could if we wanted to. I'm not going to, because I don't worry too much about that sort of thing. Here's another dead tree option. We have kind of used this one already for our sacrificial shrub now in comparison, so I'm not going to overly complicate life. We will use it there, and I don't like its layering. I think this tree should be built into the fence should be built around the tree. So look at that list of stuff that we're really incorporating here. Poor old Dungeon Fog being put to the test. We want it to sit there. Clink. And that feels so much better. All right. If we wanted to, by the way, just finishing off this riverine effect. I know we were doing trees. This is how I work, though. I never work. It's like, oh, we're going to finish off this. No. Okay, so we go back to pirates, and we go to water flow, and you get these little surf waves, which are pretty awesome. And you get low surf waves as well, which is also pretty awesome. So these you can, if you really want to create a sense of river, of flowing water, anyway, you can drop in a few. They don't have to be very big, just sort of wherever you'd think there'd be a lap of water, I suppose. I quite like them. And I got a few as well, so you can sort of play it up as you need to. So it's that, and then when they have a babbling brook, high seas. You can drop this in to make it sort of rapidy, if you will, and then I go in and I usually drop the opacity down. It's kind of there, it's kind of present. Okay, we can work on that. We can work on that. But already I think it's looking pretty good. Now my favorite part is this part that I'm about to engage in, and I only do this last. I do this last for a very specific reason. it's the fun part. So firstly, we go in, and this is actually where the designer and I disagree, but that's okay. Disagreement allows us to be different and creative. So I'm going to drop in some flame here. These are fire pits. They probably should have fire. No, we'll use a little one here because they're a little bit more conscious. Okay. Bonfire. Maybe not so much of a bonfire. All right, there we go. Okay, so putting in lighting. I love lighting, and especially the way that this program does it. So there we go. I'm going to put some those are practicals. In film and television, practical lighting is lighting that actually works, so the character can turn it on and off. In map making terms, it's a flame comes from a fire, so it creates light. I'm then going to drop in a few, we could do torches if we really wanted to, if we wanted to sort of make it feel like torches and things. But I'm not too phased at the moment by that. I'm going to drop in a light source here. And another one here. And maybe another one here. I'm going to drop one in definitely there, because we kind of have to. And maybe, no, I don't think we need to do anything there or there or there or there or there or there or there. There, that's absolutely fine. Can you see automatically what's starting to happen is that we're getting this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful shading occurring. Now, the first thing is that we go in and we change these values. So we punch it out. Glorious sunshine. And then we reduce the efficacy down to about 27, maybe even less. But I want it to feel very brown, very warm. Do you notice how it's doing that? It's warming out these colors. Really, really is warming out these colors. So I'm going to move this over to here. Okay, just this wonderful rays of light popping out, sneaking out, if you will, to illuminate the world. And then what we do is we hide the light source. Okay, we hide the light source. Love it. Again, make it super orange, super dark, super big. Maybe less dark, more dark. Okay, we just want to subtly create this wonderful sense. Now, this for me is something that I will always remember, is looking out into the dark and seeing this light shaft through the fences, and just getting this amazing sense of not foreboding, but of warmth and of happiness, because you'd always hear music, singing, people gathered together in a nice community doing what communities should be doing, which is helping one another. And I always wish that I could be part of that, because it seemed like they were having a lot more fun than we were. Right, so here we go, and once again, make it super dark, make it super bright, super warm. Okay, and then super big. Let it do all the maths for us. Is that an even light? Yes, it is. And shrink it down. Okay, maybe this light here in the middle we don't need anymore. I don't know. Maybe. Okay, you can stay. There are so many props that this poor program is currently working out. Whoa, yeah, you cast a shadow. No, you don't. Yes, you do. don't want you to cast a shadow. I realize what's going on there. I need you to move out the way so that I can grab this log to cast a shadow. Okay. And that's our light source. No, don't move. See why I do lighting last is because you don't want to have all these issues. Okay, so those are our practical lights dropping into place there. See everything's slowing down. I'll give it a moment. Think about it. Contemplate life. I'll just save when I have the choice. Okay. So it's lovely. It's so atmospheric. I really, really like where we're going with this. We're going to enhance that even more when we get to the final stage. Now, these lights in this section, I'm finding are A, not warm enough for a fire. B, I think they're a little bit too bright. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to drop down the radius as well. Okay, and you are a light source, so enable. Drop down your distance and make you orange. Okay. And this one's super bright. Warm. Again, it's more about, I think, creating the right atmosphere than anything else. Now, what they did do in Dungeon Fog, which I have completely ignored, is if you look at these values here, you'll see that the light source is actually set correctly. So this is incorrect, 2 square feet. A standard torch, I think, is 10 square feet of bright light. These are currently set at 7 square feet. So I have broken that system. Is it square feet or squares? Maybe I haven't broken it. Maybe I'm not as evil as I had thought I was. We shall see. We shall see. Okay, I'm going to zoom out now, because we are basically done. I mean, we could really fill this in if we wanted to. I'm not too inclined to do so. Now look at what happens when we change the stage lighting. Oh, doesn't that become wonderfully atmospheric? The village at night. I think that's just stunning. I think that's absolutely stunning. Now, if we really wanted to, if we really wanted to break the program, which I'm going to try and do, because why not? We can come down here, and I use lights. I use flames to light up things, because when you are later on searching for, no, that's all I wanted to do. When you are later on searching for your light sources to be able to select and change and etc., I find it a lot more useful to have them listed as flame, so that I can go in and go, oh yeah, okay, that's my light source, rather than randomly choosing, say, something else to be my light source, because you can turn anything into a light source. I mean, it's not difficult. I just like to make sure that I can find them easily. Okay, so I've put in these hidden lights under the water, so we get this little bit of a glow coming through, because the room lighting is applicable to all. Again, if I wanted it to make it feel like it's at night, I could really drop it down. And I think nighttime is a pretty cool time to encounter these guys. Do I want to put in more detailing here? Maybe. Do I want to cover this bank? Maybe. Do I need to? No, I don't. I think my players are going to have a lot of fun with this map anyway. I could tweak it, but I'm just loving these sort of light shafts and things that are spilling out everywhere. You can go and cast shadows on some of these ones if you really feel that it's going to add a huge amount. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I just think it makes a wonderfully atmospheric kind of map. So there we go. That is it. Not much more to say from me, otherwise it took an hour and a half to make this map. Don't think that's too bad considering what it contains and what its original design was. Yeah, back to me in the studio.
And there you have it. This finished map of the Zulu Kraal, the compound. I like the word kraal. I think it's a very different kind of word to one that we normally... You could call it a corral if you want to use a more Western term, I suppose. But kraal for me is quite evocative. I think it fits within the catfolk space as well. A kraal. Welcome to our kraal. I think it sort of purrs along quite nicely. Oh, that's me anyway. I hope this video has been instructional for you in terms of how we take the culture that we have now examined, we've now unpacked, and we've now put together into a map. Next week sees us taking all of that information and putting it together into a final product that we will basically be able to keep and use indefinitely until we change world settings, basically. So that should be quite an eye-opener in terms of what is the final process, what's the final journey of these things, from little thoughts in the head all the way through to something usable in a role-playing system. Until next week, I wish you and yours the very happiest of map making. You know, just when you think you're ready for your moment, you realize I'm not wearing my gloves. I mean, what kind of warrior goes into battle with... You know, I don't know if the black really works. It might be like too intimidating, which I don't want. I'm friendly, I'm nice. I pay my drinks at the bar. I don't sneak out like others. I'm not going to mention any names, crazy. I'm not going to say that. No, I'm beyond that. Anyway, okay. Ready for the video? Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, so